What's a scam that you're surprised people still fall for? Story 1. Multi-level marketing schemes. We have literally so much information now about how they are predatory. It's disgusting how a lot of them target low-income mothers who feel guilty about spending time away from home to work and earn a living. Right, single quote, right, single quote. Story 2. Don't forget tomorrow starts the new Facebook rule where they can use your photos. Don't forget deadline today. It can be used in court cases and litigation against you. Everything you've ever posted becomes public from today. Even messages that have been deleted or the photos not allowed. It costs nothing for a simple copy and paste. Better safe than sorry. Story 3. Healing crystals. If anything, they've become even more popular recently. Edit. Having said that, I've seen them be very effective as tools to affect introspection and discussion about mental health, basically operating as a fun, dialectical abstraction of psychological concepts that might be too complicated or daunting to address directly. But it's a slippery slope to letting this abstraction become a real, significant part of how you live your life. Story 4. The amount of people who put their trust in apps like Snapchat, believing them to be 100% secure and private, and that everything they send on there, yes, everything, isn't stored in some server somewhere with their verified details attached to it all, because Snapchat saves everything you send on there, and there are countless examples of that information being retrieved and leaked online. It's also incredibly easy to install workarounds which don't notify the person of images being screenshotted. So another reason to not blindly assume it's some super secure social media platform. Story 5. The email text. This is the United Postal Service. Your package has been delayed. We need you to verify name, address, and card information for delivery. Gotten those dozens of times when I don't have any packages on the way, but a ton of friends have fallen for it. Edit. A word. Story 6. My stepfather texted me a year ago saying, "Your mom and I won a lottery. We just need to go to the store to get some cards to pay for the taxes." Like, come on, man, I know you are smarter than this. Thankfully enough, all I had to do was ask him why would they make you use gift cards to pay taxes instead of just paying the IRS. He immediately connected the dots. Story 7 being green. Top 10 corporations produce 90% of the pollution, but it always falls on the citizen to be green. Buy an EV you can't afford. If everyone is pissing in the pool besides you, are you making a difference? And I don't mean to litter freely. Everyone should 110% do their part. But it's crazy to think ask citizens to completely change their routine day-to-day life while you still move on private jets/motorcades. For those of you don't know, I drive a diesel F250, a new one with modern emission systems. Every 5K-ish miles I have to buy DEF diesel exhaust fluid for my emissions, right? It comes in a 2.5-gallon plastic jug with a plastic nozzle that's wrapped in plastic in a cardboard box. So how much am I helping? This is a required chemical on all diesels 2011, 2010, and newer. Story 8. How about the scam I fell for? The fraud department of my bank calling me, alerting me to fraudulent charges happening on my card. I've had my identity stolen before, so I wasn't surprised S&D was just grateful they found the charges early on. I Googled the number, and it was the same hash as my bank. They had identifying info about me that not just anyone would have, and asked me verifying questions after that my bank asked me any time I have called them before. It was so believable, and I was already in a stressed mental state prior to the call. When I called my bank directly the next day, even the employee told me it was legitimate. It wasn't until I called again that an employee dug into their logs of text calls to me that they determined it was fake. Luckily, I was only out about 1.5 hours of my time in total with talking to the scammer, changing card and bank numbers, updating accounts, etc., and didn't lose a dime. Main lesson I learned, if your bank calls you for any reason, hang up and call them directly. Don't be like me. Edited to add, when they were sending me texts to verify things, help me add the card alerts to my phone, the confirmation text came from a number that I've gotten legitimate texts from my bank before. They're too smart. Story 9. Scammers claiming to be from Verizon Fraud Protection were so convincing, they almost had me taken in, right up until they asked for my monthly payment, which would immediately be returned to my account after the transaction was completed, to be sent to a Venmo recipient named Esteban Martinez. Story 10. Extended car warranties. They somehow know you bought a car, call you relentlessly, and make it sound like your vehicle will literally disintegrate without their coverage. The real scam, though, is how they've convinced someone out there to actually pick up the phone and say, "You know what? This sounds legit." Story 11. Sending a cashier's check that's for too much money to pay for something, reserve something, and then asking for dollar to be sent back. The original check subsequently bounces a few days later. So coming on Craigslist/Facebook/Nextdoor, and people keep falling for it. Story 12, VPNs. While there are situations where they are useful, those reasons do not always match the reasons the marketing materials suggest. They are not a magical security and privacy unicorn that saves you from every possible security threat. Story 13. Pretty much any text SMS-based scam that relies on recipient clicking on a link to validate some account login or request. Some of these scams are pretty hard to detect, like a business email compromise where a threat actor slips into an existing email thread. But anything where someone from out of the blue just contacts you with no context should be incredibly suspicious. Story 14. The international catfish. Gorgeous girl talks to you for weeks and wants to meet you in real life. Unfortunately, she's all the way in Poland and can't afford a ticket. She would never accept a gift so generous, but I guess this is true love after all. Story 15. A guy I know was telling me how Habitat for Humanity asked him to buy a bunch of random stuff. He let them know, via text, when he'd bought it all. Probably a test to see how gullible he is. They responded, "Oh well, we already got all that, just return it and send iTunes gift cards." I immediately told him it was definitely a scam. He wouldn't believe me. I asked him, why the hell would Habitat for Humanity ask for iTunes gift cards? He insisted he'd met the woman in person, so it couldn't be a scam. Some people are just so... Story 16. When you're at the checkout and they ask, "Do you want to round your purchase up to the nearest dollar to help the children?" I used to do it without thinking, but one time I asked what children. The cashier didn't know. I asked the same question at a couple different businesses and same thing. If you're going to donate to a charity, at least know which charity it is. Story 17. The men and women who pretend they love you, then they or family members get sick, and you have to send them money. Happened to two women I know, and they were both well-educated. Should have known better with all of us warning them too. Story 18, where they get a call from a dude with an unintelligibly thick Indian accent claiming to be from the FBI, saying there are drug trafficking charges against them, and the only way to avoid getting all their assets frozen is to go to a gas station crypto ATM and send $10K in Bitcoin to a wallet. Story 19, the Reddit echo chamber. It's literal groupthink by majority rule. Any minority viewpoint gets immediately downvoted, which means the minority viewpoints eventually get frustrated and leave the platform, and the circle jerk continues with even less alternate viewpoints. And then everyone here is confused when Reddit does not reflect reality. Story 20 celebrities reaching out to old people on Facebook and convincing them they are in love and should send them money. I couldn't believe the online stories I read. Then it happened to an older gentleman I know. He had never had internet before a new girlfriend set it up for him and got him a phone with all the apps. He immediately fell into a scam and believed a movie star was reaching out to him and wanted to meet him. It was so sad. Luckily, his friends intervened before it got too bad. Story 21. I'm in a medical field, and these are the scams I usually see in my field. No hate here, but those healing stones. They try to manipulate older people by saying it has a lot of benefits, like it is a therapeutic treatment that works for everyone. They are thousands of dollars, and they target older people/people with morbidity. No scientific observation that these ones really do help heal you. Also, alkaline-rich water, because too much acid in our body is bad. How about I tell you that your stomach contains acid to digest your food? Story 22, pyramid schemes. My mother has been involved with at least 3 over the course of my life, and that includes the one she's in now, which is LifeVantage. I have explained to her so many times that it's a pyramid scheme, and the only people who make money selling this are the people on top of the pyramid, but she refuses to listen. Story 23, voting in America. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Dems under Obama had all 3 branches of government and merely forced us to pay private insurance through the ACA. They don't want single-payer health insurance any more than Republicans do. Too much money funneled into both parties' coffers. Bernie Sanders may be legit in his beliefs, and look at what his own party did to him. Story 24. This will probably make me sound like a crazy person, but imho. The biggest scam is thinking that working to the bone 9-5 until you're 65 is the ultimate dream and pinnacle of human living. Same with other modern-day life, like constant exposure to screens, bombarded with ads and consumerism, spending a lot of time indoors, relying on technology to do everything for us, etc., etc., etc. Basically, we don't use our bodies and brains as they're built to be used. The desire to make survival less daunting has led us to turn into solitary creatures of comfort. Hyper-individualism makes us lonely, depressed, and anxious. We are social creatures that thrive on community and being active. Nature has pretty much everything we need, and we don't have that knowledge like we used to. Our dopamine is also completely jacked up, making us less and less inclined to take care of ourselves in healthy ways. Physical exertion, providing for ourselves, serving each other in communities, having more time for pleasure and hobbies and socializing, this is how our ancestors experienced dopamine. It all works almost like a system, where our brain is getting a steady flow of dopamine. Compared to today, we are overwhelmed, tired, overworked, lonely, addicted to internet. Our dopamine takes a big hit and crashes, making us feel bad, making us cope in unhealthy ways like endless scrolling, binge eating, smoking, drinking, hours of TV, etc., just to get that immediate dopamine hit. I promise I'm not one of those paranoid conspiracy theorists or some hippie telling you to move to the woods and drink raw milk. I do love a lot of other aspects of modern life, like modern medicine and all that. I just think power and greed has steered humans so beyond off course from what our bodies and minds are capable of, and ways to spend our time that make us feel good and give us a purpose. Working 50 hours a week just to be able to barely have free time with our families, barely able to afford our mortgages and cars and insurance and bills and processed junk food. It's all a way to keep consumerism and capitalism going. That is not a purpose. That's straight up a scam. Story 25. Those supposed birthday parties. You go to one you're invited to and pay $5,000 to go in. Then you have one and invite a bunch of people to do the same at yours. Had an acquaintance invite me. I immediately said that sounds like a pyramid scheme. She insisted it wasn't. No way, I didn't go. Story 26. In my country, you can order food on trains using both the Govt app and via all the major food delivery companies. And on every major station, I will see at least one guy hop on with a meal, trying to convince people that someone refused to accept this delivery, and now he's selling this food for 50 to 80% off. It's obviously some extremely low-quality food from a shady restaurant, and I see people fall for it every time. The number of times I have stopped people from buying those meals must be easily in the dozens. I honestly don't get it. You are literally buying food that you have no idea where it came from. If it's spoiled, tastes bad, or God forbid makes you sick, you will have no way to complain or demand a refund, and you are still willing to pay for it just because it's cheap? People stump me. Story 27. I work in customer service for one of the main banks in the UK, and the amount of customers we get that are falling impersonation scams is unreal. These scammers are mainly impersonating us, calling customers and telling them that there's been fraudulent transactions on their account, and that they need to transfer their funds out to a safe account created in their name. There's a system in the UK called 3D Secure. It's an approval method that requires you to manually approve any online transactions in your banking app before the payment is made, and it's a system that's required by law to mitigate these types of fraudulent payments. These scammers will make online transactions for thousands and tell people to approve this in their app to transfer it over to a safer account. Couple this with a verification text from a spoof number, and people will fall for it hook, line, and sinker 99% of the time. Just remember, if the bank calls you asking you to move funds anywhere, it's not the bank, and you should hang up straight away. Edit. Romance scams are also insanely common and sometimes some of the saddest calls we take in CS. These are when someone has been speaking to an individual online, usually for a number of years, and has grown an attachment or a relationship with this person, who has manipulated them into transferring their money over to them for family emergencies or hospital bills, quite often losing their life savings. Story 28. That one where a pretend boxer sets up matches against people that used to be good fighters and promotes it as a real fight, and the media adds a massive amount of hype so that people are willing to stay up past midnight to watch them pretend to punch each other. Story 29. Medicare Advantage. For real. Medicare is the best insurance I ever had. Advantage is just regular insurance companies taking the money you paid in during your work years as monthly payment to provide the normal, very flawed insurance we in the US are used to, which is to say they try their best not to pay if they can get away with it. I know insurance quite well, having been disabled since age 5. I worked 40 years but am now retired. Even with ACA protections in place, insurers try to keep from paying for services your doctor prescribes. Right now, I have a pressure sore on my foot. My home health nursing supervisor, who certifies my need each month, told me recently if I had Advantage, she would not be able to get service for me now that it's doing much better, regardless of the fact that the doctor and the nurses treating me say I still require treatment. In the past, I've had sores reopen or become infected if treatment ends too soon. Also, when my dad was dying, he had Medicare Advantage because they hard sell with telemarketers using cold calls constantly, and he was very vulnerable to that kind of tactic. I got 3 calls Saturday. He had terrible bed sores, but could not get home health for them through the Advantage program he was enrolled in. Fortunately, he got some care through the VA. We private paid the rest. At the same time, I had smaller, better-managed sores and was able to get Medicare coverage. Before y'all without the experience, jump in with your feelings about how people should not have terrible bed sores if they're being cared for properly. If you have poor circulation and are bedbound or can't move your lower extremities well, you can get skin breakdown within a matter of hours, even when you're actively trying not to. They will get worse without help. It is a constant battle, even with proper booties and mattress covers and turning and all the other methods of mitigating. Once it is an open sore, it needs care and constant dressing changes to keep from becoming a serious problem. My sister was executor of my dad's estate because she's the eldest. It took nearly 2 years of constant battle to get Advantage to reimburse for his last month of care, and my sister is a formidable opponent in phone battles and paperwork wars. I have never once had to fight to get Medicare to pay for services that had already been approved and provided. Sometimes you need to wait a period of time to replace medical equipment, but that is something you discuss during the approval process. Once approved, it is promptly paid, and equipment replacement periods are quite reasonable. Medicare Advantage is a straight-up scam, and the ads you see telling old people you may be eligible for all kinds of outlandish extras are Advantage ads meant to draw you in. They bear no resemblance to actual coverage, except under very extreme situations that most people never find themselves in. Like all U.S. health insurance, it is great as hypothetical aid sometime in the future when you might be ill for a brief period of time. If you actually need that help, they will find a reason you don't qualify or just flat out stall 2 years so you go on and die. Finally, if you take an Advantage plan when you first qualify for Medicare while you are still healthy and it is all hypothetical, then you discover later it doesn't cover what you need, you forever pay more for Medicare. And yes, Medicare is insurance and you do pay for it monthly. It is just better, less costly insurance because they are allowed to bargain down fee schedules. Story 30, Crypto. It's pretty much all speculative. I've followed the technology since 2012 and even got on board. This was back when MTGOX was the only way you could get Bitcoin. Originally, I liked the concept of being in charge of your own wealth without having to use a bank. There were, of course, huge barriers for that to happen. The biggest one, at least back in the day, was the time it took for the blockchain to converge changes. It made things like using Bitcoin in common places unreasonable. For example, back in the day, you couldn't really pay for your groceries with Bitcoin unless the receiver took a huge gamble that the exchange would clear because it would take 20 minutes to finish the blockchain. Imagine scanning your groceries and then having to hang out in the store for like 30 minutes until the grocer said, "Okay, your transaction cleared. Here's your receipt." In 2012, I was on board with it because I figured that eventually we would figure out how to overcome technical limitations to make the concepts that made crypto attractive to me a reality. Unfortunately, that never really developed, and now people mostly just use Bitcoin and analogs as currency speculation. While a few more places accept crypto as a legit form of payment, I feel like the vast majority of uses in the past 5 years have mostly revolved around rug pull, pump, and dump schemes, which is sad because I still like the premises that I originally liked in 2012. I pulled out my original investment on the first wave when Bitcoin popped off, but I will probably never participate again. I know there are some crypto bros that will probably counter some of my thoughts on this, but it doesn't matter. I feel like crypto has hurt far more people than it's helped, and it's honestly just become yet another shelter for the wealthy to avoid taxes and increase wealth by taking advantage of poorer people looking for financial stability in a financially unstable world. Story 31. The phone call where the scammer tells you that you owe several $1,000s in back taxes, and if you don't pay up right now, they will call the police and have you thrown in jail. But fortunately for you, they're willing to take payments over the phone. But first, you have to give them your social security number and all personal information, just to verify your identity, of course. Or the text scam, where someone texts the usually elderly target from an unknown number, saying that they are a young relative that got in trouble with the police and need the target to send them a large sum of money for bail bribes. They tell the target not to bother trying to contact them, the actual relative, through their regular phone number because it was stolen, broken. Story 32. Every couple of months, our local news will run a story about someone losing their life savings. It's always the same scam. The person will get a call saying that they've broken a law, and the only way to take care of it is to buy a bunch of gift cards and then transfer that amount to the cops so that they don't go to jail. I'm not sure why people think that $20,000 worth of GameStop gift cards will take care of legal problems. I don't even feel bad for them anymore. Story 33. Lowering taxes on the rich will benefit everyone. The psychology is everyone dreams of being rich, so they mentally put themselves in that group despite the fact that the odds of them actually becoming rich are minuscule. Nevertheless, they support things that benefit the wealthy at the expense of themselves. Story 34. Trump, MAGA, conservatives, Republicans, and neo-Nazi. These people fall for misinformation that is relatively easy to debunk. They're almost always connected to the next fear-mongering cause that creates ignorance and bigotry. The data is there, but people won't learn from it. Story 35. So, TBH. I'm shocked that people fall for the one that's been on the news as of late, where someone calls you and tells you that you missed jury duty, and now there is a warrant out for your arrest, but have no fear, because if you go to this certain ATM and buy Bitcoin and send it to this address, your warrant will be quashed. Maybe it's because I'm a little more familiar with the Department of Corrections than the average. But, no, Lowell, none of that makes any sense. Story 36-1 scam. The father of my friend fell for is the Hollywood thing, where a person gives you a CD, claims they're an up-and-coming star, and that it's free. Then when you take it, they usually guilt you in some way into giving the money. If you ever go to a tourist area and this happens, the best way to deal with it is to just not take the CD and walk away. Story 37. Those UPS package cannot be delivered. Follow link to enter correct address texts that start bombarding people's phones during the holidays. And they know to send out these scam texts during the holidays because most people are buying presents online, and they could easily fall for them. I know too many older people who fell for it last year when I worked at a phone store and they needed their phones completely reset. One man lost most of his pictures because the virus he got wouldn't even let us press backup and reset. Story 38. Rent-to-own schemes for just about anything, but primarily nice to have things like TVs or furniture sets. Consider Rent-A-Center, which has a Samsung 50 inches, the frame-clad 4K smart TV, which you can rent to own for only $10 plus $39.99 per week. And after 87 weekly payments, it's yours to keep. Except when you do the math, that works out to $3,489.13 worth of payments over about 20 months. Meanwhile, you could just buy that TV today directly off your favorite retailer for $749.99. If you got a loan today for that $750 and had to pay $3,489.13 over 20 months for that loan, you'd be paying over 200% interest per year. That's highway robbery. If you were ever going to consider this, just put the $750 TV on a credit card. That's even a better decision. Story 39, where they call and ask you to verify bank login details and account numbers because there has been a fraudulent transaction. It's so old, I thought it had been pounded into our heads by now that the bank never ever calls you and asks for your account number. If it's your bank calling, they know your account number and they don't need your login. Story 40. I worked in fraud prevention, anti-phishing, financial crime detection units for a few good years. Generally speaking, what's interesting is that all modern fraud still relies on the same principles of fraud from hundreds of years ago, and that people are still not taught the principles at any point well enough not to fall victims. At the core, you still have advance fee fraud, which is 90% of what people fall victim to. So if I can do anything of value, I'd say to people here, learn what advance fee fraud is and have it in mind whenever money changes hands. At the core, it's when someone wants you to give them money before they give you money or goods. On Facebook Marketplace, it's always, I want to buy the item you posted. Can you pay the courier by transfer/cash/buy the post label via this link? Or some like that. On real estate fraud, it would be putting a deposit to secure a viewing of a non-existent apartment or some variation of it. Marketplace fraud is when someone sells you something that doesn't exist. So that's just about buying from safer vendors and using insured transfer methods rather than bank transfer or whatever else. Advance fee fraud is the oldest trick in the book. Do not fall for it. I fought scams for nearly 20 years, and I still need to be in complete awareness when I trade anything online. Be careful. Story 41, USPS or Amazon texting you saying you have a package that needs to be delivered but can't due to some address or zip code issue. I used to work for USPS, and trust me, they will not text you. They do not have time for that crap. If it's a bad address, it gets returned to the sender. Don't fall for it. Story 42. What isn't a scam nowadays? From deceptive packaging to corporate speak to hidden fees to packs to engineered obsolescence to almost every BS health product to mental health apps to crypto to AI. This is the era of the scam and a natural progression in capitalism when you run out of things to sell. Story 43. Facebook and TikTok as well for the same reasons. It is an unabashed, cynical pipeline for harvesting user sentiment so that advertisers can directly manipulate users into changing that sentiment. They don't even pretend to hide it. The user experience is entirely crafted to show you what advertisers will find most valuable, which incidentally happens to be divisive rage bait because that holds people's attention, regardless of users trying to see other things. At this point, Facebook is scamming its users. TikTok is on the same track, albeit not quite as far along and with slightly different objectives. Story 44. I almost fell for one recently when they sent me a very grainy photo of my car and accused me of some vague traffic infraction and said I owed money. Luckily, I lost the citation. So I looked it up online, couldn't find it, emailed the courts, they couldn't find it, went down to the courthouse, no clue. And I still didn't figure it out. Myself thought the court messed up somewhere and that I had the ticket. Then I got a second letter for more because I didn't pay the first. So I went down to the courthouse and requested a court date because I couldn't pay the first one if I wanted to, because no one could find it. Plus, please explain what this ticket is even for. The picture is at night. I can barely make out my car, and the description of the infraction somehow doesn't explain what I did. Anyway, the other day, someone posted the exact same picture in my city's Reddit page asking if it was a scam, and it absolutely is. And if I hadn't lost the scam paper, I probably would have paid it and never thought twice about it. Story 45. What doctors don't tell you, and similar magazines and websites. They prey on those that distrust real medical experts, while still using imagery of people in white coats and stethoscopes to sell you all kinds of scams. I had an uncle fall for it, who ended up having his cancer treated with GC math instead of the regular options. It cost him all his considerable savings. It didn't do anything. He died 2 months after being cured. They prey on vulnerable and desperate mortally ill people. Really some of the worst I have seen. Story 46. TV license letters in the UK. The 2003 Communications Act doesn't require a license for streaming services, but the letter they send you out sure claims that you do. One especially exciting one was sent to my retail business claiming that people watching TV on their phones in my store meant that I needed a license. I mean, I'm sure most people just chuck the letters, but how many people pay for a license that they don't actually need because of their scummy letters? And because it's a sort of government thing, it has this thin veneer of legality to it. Disgusting. Story 47. The fabled your yard got towed, and it's in the police lot. So no, you have to pay an X amount to a random bank account to get it back. I don't know if it's common outside of my country, but the scheme is that you get an awful-looking EML and PDF saying that your car got towed for illegal parking, and after paying the specified amount, you get the car back. The catch is that the document does not specify anything but the amount and the back account, does not say the exact police department, the type of car, the license plate, nor the owner. Nothing. And yet some people believe it. Just a few months back, my colleague was so angry at the police for sending that when his car was not towed. We told him it's a scam and he was shocked. Story 48. MLM of anything today. Even when it doesn't even make sense. I know someone who is starting one. It's health insurance, but the real money is getting the person to buy it and then also resell it and get a whopping $5 commission, and you get a coupon book. And this guy openly admits it's a MLM, but he figures if there are suckers out there, he is going to take advantage of them. It's disgusting. Story 49. 98% of products that make any claim about reducing / eliminating / cleansing / etc. radiation do absolutely nothing but separate you from your money. Over and over, people have shown that the anti-EM stickers are just cheap plastic holograms, that the EM cleansing plugs are empty, etc. But people still fall for it. Also worth pointing out, the 2% that actually do something, like the cages you can drop over your Wi-Fi router that reduce the strength of its RF output, are still bull from a health claim point of view. But at least they actually do the fundamental thing they claim, and may even have legitimate uses like limiting the range of a radio. Story 50. I didn't fall for it, but it was funny all the same. Had a guy with a typical Middle Eastern accent call me and frantically tell me that hackers were almost about to hack my computer and that I had to give him access to fend them off for me. I told him that it was currently impossible for it to be hacked, and he said, "No, sir, you don't understand. They are almost in your system and will steal all of your credit card information." And I said, "No, it's impossible. My computer isn't plugged up at the moment. No Ethernet, no power cord, etc. It's essentially a plastic brick at the moment." And he was like, "Sir, they can still hack it." Just funny. Story 51. The more I learn about them, the less surprised I am that people fall for them. Scams seem silly to those who aren't necessarily their target. But under the surface, they are extremely sophisticated, and there is always going to be someone who becomes a victim. Some white-collar professionals will get scammed by phishing emails, exploiting busyness and urgency to keep you from thinking through clicking that link. Some widowers will be scammed by romance scams, exploiting loneliness and established trust to request money for an emergency. Some seeking quick weight loss fixes will be scammed by fake diet pills promising quick, easy results after they've struggled with dieting and exercise. Some looking to have more agency over their work life will inadvertently get sucked into an MLM scheme on the promise of being your own boss or having income directly tied to effort expended. Some job seekers will get duped by a fake recruiter, trying to get them to open a PDF job requisition containing malware after months of frustration built up from automated rejection emails and getting ghosted during the job hunt. Awareness, knowledge, and healthy skepticism can make you a more difficult target. There's countless stories of people who thought, oh, that would never happen to me, until it did. Story 52. A scam that still gets a lot of people in online gambling is the bonus and withdrawal scam. Here's how it works. You sign up for a site that promises big bonuses or free money to get you to play. But when you try to withdraw your winnings, the site makes up excuses like needing extra verification or claiming fraud just to keep your money. It's surprising how many people fall for it, even though this scam has been around for years. The promise of easy money often blinds people to the red flags. Always make sure the site is trustworthy before you start playing. Story 53, OMFG. Being a young mom in the 2010s, I was so sick of the It Works and Thrive BS. My sister sold Thrive and it messed her body up so bad. She's done so many MLMs and they never go anywhere. All these stay-at-home moms adding me from middle school and they almost always sold MLM. One girl did get super rich, but it fell apart eventually. Huge mansion and everything. Now a single mom in a little apartment. Sad. So I've seen it be successful, but rarely. Story 54. Almost any public site and the beautiful, insert country and/or culture woman who keeps chatting with you just simply cannot afford a plane ticket to come visit you on her pittance of a salary in the insert random low-wage unskilled worker job in her country. Same goes for the reverse. Men trapped somewhere and all my money is on hold, etc., etc., etc. Sad. Story 55. The gift card scams. I finally decided to join eBay like 2 years ago to sell some video game stuff. I was trying to get a new Xbox. The first item I put up for sale, a guy messaged me that day saying he would be willing to pay me more than my asking price if I would buy a gift card for him. I told him he'll know and moved on. I know that there are people out there that fall for that stuff, and it frustrated me that it happened the first day I joined eBay. Story 56. My cousin was randomly texted from an old high school classmate. He never talked to this person in his whole entire life, asking for him to log on to his Instagram from a link they sent them for money. And this dummy lost his whole Instagram account in a minute. Common sense went out the window. Story 57. Crowdfunding scams under the guise of charitable causes. It's shocking how many people spin tragic tales only to pocket the donations from well-meaning supporters. Always do proper research before opening your wallet to an online plea for help. Too often, these stories are fabricated by those looking to exploit empathy and kindness for a quick buck. Story 58. I'm going to be honest and tell you about a time when I really needed money. An American said he was going to give me a lot of money from his heart. I know he was innocent, but that to receive it, I had to pay PicPay shipping. This PicPay shipping was a high price, but it was worth paying. I came back to my senses and common sense. I didn't pay. He blocked me. I warned the PicPay website about this scam and the guy's account went down, I believe. Story 59. Bond measures. They're always wrapped in statements about improving education, schools, clean water, etc. And most people don't even know what bonds are or how they impact our future taxes. They just see something about making something better and assume the money is going to come out of thin air. Story 60. Almost any of them, nothing is too good to be true. But as you age, defenses start to lower and loneliness kicks in. My dad had 2 boxes of clearinghouse sweepstakes showing up every 2 days. He was convinced he had won the jackpot and was going to be on TV the day of the Super Bowl twice. We spoke to the mail lady to not bring them anymore. She said, no problem, I have a couple more on my route. I had to do this for. Story 61. My very good friend in her 80s has destroyed her marriage, lost her home, and all the possessions that she collected over a lifetime is basically couch surfing. All because she keeps sending her Social Security money to someone she's only emailed with. Never seen him, never talked on the phone, never even texted, but they are in love. I still can't convince her to at least change her privacy setting on Facebook because she loves that all these men are interested in her. Story 62. I know everyone likes to make jokes about, we've been trying to reach you about your extended warranty, but it seems like they've really calmed down over the past couple of years. The question was how they would ever get people to fall for them. Oh, I might be on the hook for paying for expensive repairs that could cost me money, and I can protect myself against them by paying you money. Story 63. Attorney signs a new client, entity they've never heard of before, then immediately agrees to settle for some ungodly amount and cuts a check. Client demands payment immediately after attorney cashes check into their trust account. Check eventually bounces and the attorney has committed malpractice with their trust account. Story 64. Most of supply-side economics is implemented today. Available capital doesn't drive stable employment. Demand for goods and services drives employment. Cutting taxes at the top doesn't significantly contribute to demand for goods and services. Granting economic leeway at the bottom contributes to demand for goods and services. Story 65. I've wondered what the end game of the phone calls I've gotten at work for years get, but the problem for them is they always have a foreign accent, and I know my boss's voice. So when they say, "This is the owner of the business," I say, "No, you aren't. You don't sound anything like the owner. Is this James?" And they always say yes, so I then say, "Well, that's not my boss's name. You must have the wrong number," and I hang up. I keep telling myself one day I'm going to keep talking to them and string them along and say, "Oh, hey, boss," just to keep it going so I know why they keep calling and pretending to be the boss. But they always call while I'm super busy. I work at a convenience store gas station and have been there for 14 years. The actual owner sold all his stores 2 years ago. So now I actually do have a boss with a similar accent to the caller, but I know what my boss sounds like. And I even got one a few weeks ago. So when the man on the other end said, "Good morning, this is the owner of the business," not store owner, the owner of the business, I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. The owner isn't here right now. You can call back after lunch and he should be here." Just kind of stringing him along with him a little to see what he would say. And he said, no, this is the owner of the business. I said, "Really, what is my name?" And he just hung up, which was sad because I had a little time to play with him that day and was hoping to finally discover why I get at least one call every month or two from a fake owner of the business. Story 66. A friend of mine stopped in my store a couple of years ago. She was a previous employee where I work. I was her manager. And she told me she was going to use her last $50 to go buy a gift card, and she was going to receive a grant for several $1,000s. I said, "What the hell? That's a scam." She honestly didn't know. She said something had told her to stop and run it by me before she spent her last cash. She was super disappointed about not getting that grant, though. Story 67. Those music CD scams in major city tourist areas. Someone or a group of people will proclaim themselves as popular or up-and-coming music artists and offer you a CD with their album. It is almost certainly blank. They will pressure you to take the CD by offering it as a gift, sometimes autographing it or signing your name on it to make it seem more valuable and personal. Once the CD is in your hands, they'll harass you by demanding money as a donation or payment. Who the hell has a CD player in this day and age, and would even be interested in some random guy's mixtape? Story 68. Not every scam, but this applies for a lot of them. Just reminding everyone here that scams often are made terrible on purpose. They want them to be ridiculous. The reason is easy. Their target are people being stressed out and not thinking too much about it. Once they do, they realize they fell for a very obvious scam. Knowing that, they hide it out of shame, which is exactly the reason these scams are the way they are. It is not about not getting caught or getting as many people as possible. It is about the people you got hided as long as possible from their superiors, their IT, etc. This is much more valuable for the scammer and the exact reason why you help the scammers if you shame victims or make fun of them. The next victim you may prevent from doing what he has to do after getting scammed, reporting it to people that can get them out or lessen the damage. Story 69. Radiation protection sleeves for phones. Let's ignore all the stuff about ionizing radiation versus RF radiation. There's a simple thought experiment you can use to evaluate whether radiation protecting sleeves are bull. If the sleeves block radiation, how is the phone supposed to function? Story 70. Crowdfunding. You give them a bit of seed or payment for an initial run of a product in exchange for exclusive deals and benefits. It seemed selfless and charitable at first. Then it was just a bunch of startups wanting seed money of any denomination in exchange for a thank you. So you funded new companies and all you got was a coffee mug. No equity, no dividends, no interest on loans, nothing. And someone else got a company. Story 71. Crypto. You pay real money to put on a ledger that you own a fraction of a monopoly paper. People assume there's this demand that floats the valuation. But most of Bitcoin is owned by 10 holders. If the big players got in at 1K or less, then they have vast multiples of value by only selling a tenth of their holdings. It doesn't matter if another coin never sells again. It's not a stock that's tied to a real company's performance or anything. Nothing stops the big players from holding to keep a high value or trading between each other to fake activity. At least with a bank, there's some vault with tangible assets people will value, even in a huge recession. Might be a fraction of what's supposed to be there with fractional reserves, but the rest of it is tied up in other asset ventures of the bank. So the rest of the money is still tied to the bank.